I'm Jay Rao. South Florida produces some of the best athletes in Florida. And one of the best and historic neighborhoods in Miami-Dade County is Coconut Grove. Whether it's Frank Gore, whether it's Neil Colsey, Craig Curry, or Gerald Tinker, there's an endless amount of names of great athletes that came out of Coconut Grove. But what about preserving that history? Well, joining me today is a gentleman from the Coconut Grove Sports Hall of Fame who puts together a great display of tributes to some of the great athletes to ever come out of Coconut Grove. Welcome to the show, Anthony Witherspoon, co-founder of the Coconut Grove Sports Hall of Fame. Thank you for joining us, Anthony.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and to meet someone like yourself who's a great sports historian.
Oh, thank you.
The pleasure is mine.
Thank you, Anthony. I wanted to know, you co-founded, you're listed as the co-founder of the Coconut Grove Sports Hall of Fame, and the man who helped you along was Craig Curry, who's one of the great athletes to come out of Coconut Grove, and of course a great quarterback at Coral Gables High School, and later was drafted by the 1972 Miami Dolphins. Yes. Talk about how the Coconut Grove Sports Hall of Fame came about.
Well, Craig Curry not only was a great athlete, he was a great athletic administrator, and he was the athletic director at Albany State when I was coaching at Clark, Atlanta, maybe about 15 years before I opened up the Hall of Fame. And I met him at a game, and 10 years later, he wasn't working there any longer. Neither was I at Clark, Atlanta. We met in Miami, and we always reminisce about the good old days. And then it just popped in my head one day. I said, Craig, we need to create a museum that we can archive all this great history. And he said, yes. So I immediately called Charlie Coney, who's another one of our historians in the museum, former Hall of Fame player as well, and some other players, and kind of used them as a committee to put together a lot of information. But one of the main persons who really made it come alive was one of my board members, Miss Corky Dozier, who had a knack of putting people together, finding funding. And then when I got her involved, man, she just kind of helped me put it all together till today.
Tell me what makes Coconut Grove such a special place. I know it's one of the oldest areas in Miami. It's one of the areas where it was settled by Bahamian immigrants who helped build the city, literally from the very beginning with the Henry Flagler Railroad and everything. Yes. But it's such a historic area. Talk about why the Grove is such a special place.
Well, you mentioned it right off the head. Although the Bahamians was here to help construct most of Coconut Grove and some of South Bayshore Drive, they were plenty in numbers. So when the city was trying to create a charter to make Miami an official city, they needed those Bahamian signatures to make it a reality. So with all the Bahamians that were there at that time and the Miamians that were here made that charter available, then they stayed in the community and created a little Black Mecca hub, so to speak. At that time, it was on Charles Avenue. And by the way, I want to let the listeners know we have a Little Bahamas tour available if they so desire. They can go to info at Tap Tours, and we'll give them a tour of Little Bahamas. In addition to that, it just grew over time and became Charles Avenue that is so popular, they had to move it over to Grand Avenue, which then became the main street of the Black community. And from that time, the community just grew and grew and grew into what it was today. And to answer your question, within that growth developed a lot of leaders in the community that became great mentors and coaches, like Billy Rowe, one of the few African Americans who have the post office named after them, the Coconut Grove Post Office. Obviously, Trask Power, who don't need much introduction to, one of the great coaches not only in Miami but in the state of Florida. I understand he's the first person who scored a touchdown, first student athlete to score a touchdown in the Orange Bowl during its construction era. From there, as you said, a host of great athletes in that little, what I'll call a mile, no more than a mile and a half radius of a community. A lot of great athletes. We invite you to the Hall of Fame as a tour when you get a chance, your guests and your listeners.
Absolutely. In fact, I had a chance to tour the Hall of Fame, and I was really impressed with the facility. And one of the things I noticed that when I was doing some research on Coconut Grove athletes is that there's a lineage of it's a very close knit community, and there's a lineage of families, specific families like the Colseys, the Cambridges, the Rolls. Those names seem to come up a lot when I. What is it about those families? What are some of the prominent families of Coconut Grove and the athletic traditions that they brought?
Well, people talk about generational wealth, keeping it in the family, passing it on. In this case, it was community wealth, so to speak, as it relates to family members staying in a community and just prospering it both economically, educationally, because a lot of them, that people that you mentioned, was also educators and community leaders, coaches and what have you. And obviously when they had their kids, they stayed in the community. Unlike now, where everyone migrates across the United States, one family could be here, a brother and sister would leave, and you very seldom see them. During that time in the 40s and 50s, 60s, families tend to stay together. And what better place than not only Miami, but Coconut Grove, weather-wise, beauty-wise, water-wise. You didn't want to go anywhere else. And within that, family structure was solid, stable. And kids had kids that had kids that had kids that become great athletes after their uncles and aunt. It really was a tremendous type of hierarchy, so to speak, of family generational, not only wealth, but sports talent.
Right. You mentioned some of the people that have gone on and moved on, maybe away from Coconut Grove, but a couple of athletes that kind of fit that description that you just said, like Willis McGahee and Andre Dawson. Now, they didn't actually grow up in Coconut Grove, but their fathers did, and their fathers both played for, of course, the legendary Traz Powell at Carver High School. Right. I want you to tell me about the importance of Carver High, because to me it seems like Carver High School was like the hub of Coconut Grove, like the place where where everybody was it has such a close alumni base. Talk about that.
Very unusual family unit and mechanism that occurred. You probably have heard a lot of people say, particularly older people, I should say, when we were young, if we messed up in the neighborhood, not only did the neighbors correct us, but we knew by the time we got home, we were in trouble. Well, that's the type of community it was. And people were just very close-knitted. And your teachers were respected. They were mentors. They were very well possessed what you call educational excellence. Pass that on to the coaches. Very unique thing, which don't occur today. Don't occur in the Grove now because of obviously the 66 65 desegregation rule that came from the Supreme Court to segregate schools, and we had to go over the Gables. That really broke the fabric of it all and created the unbalance that it is now. And the gentrification now comes in where you're basically being bought out your neighborhood because of high-priced developers. No, it's not the same, but it was very unique. And that educational excellence passed down from family to family. You were expected to be excellent if you wasn't a student athlete, at least in your educational pursuits. We had people like Winston Scott, who was the first Black astronaut to walk in space, from Coconut Grove. We had great educational leaders like the Rolls, Shannon Roll. They named Miami-Dade County, named a center after her here in Coconut Grove. So excellence was expected.
Now, you talked about you actually graduated from Coral Gables High School, but were you among the first? Well, maybe just before you were the first African American students to go to Coral Gables High. They after Carver had become a junior high school, then the students from Carver integrated with Coral Gables, and I was wondering if you were a part of that.
Not the initial first year, which I think was 67, 66. I did go in 69 for 10th grade, and then obviously 11th and 12th, and graduated in 72. So that was the beginning of my tenure. But I always knew when segregation occurred, I had to go to Gables once I finished Coral Gables and Carver Junior High, I should say. And just going over with other friends made it an easy transition. I can imagine how it was in '66 when it was like, you're no longer at Carver, you're going to a totally white dominant school. I understand it was very tough for a lot of the student athletes, which created the rift where when Trask Powell obviously was no longer coaching at Carver, he wasn't wanted as a coach over there. He created his own athletic empire down in Mays High School, which was another black high school that was not closed down. And a lot of the athletes had to make that determination whether they were going to go to Gables or go down to Mays and follow their coach mentor. And I don't know whether Mr. Coney told you the story where when that occurred, half of the athletes went to Gables and half followed him. And one day, Trask Powell went over to Gables, saw some of his players coaching with Nick Cody at the time, and kind of yelled at him and, yo, take off that stuff and get over here and kind of, follow me to Mays, so to speak. Well, some did, some didn't. And the ones who didn't, such as Craig Curry, Gerald Tinker, we call this guy Beatty Buck, who was all city running back, and a host of other great athletes stayed and made Coral Gables great as becoming team of the century. So that was quite a dichotomy where not only were your school closed down, but you had to decide as a student athlete, am I going to follow my black coach, mentor Trask Powell, or am I going to go over here with the great Nick Cody? A lot of parents made that determination by, well, the way you got to Mays, where you had to get on US 1 and hijack, all the way down to, was it the Homestead or hitchhike all the way to all the way to Goose, and get back.
That's quite a bit of that's quite a trip. For people who don't know,
or walk over to Gables,
right?
And you'll be home like I was in 10 minutes. But that's how student athletes are devoted to their coaches. And the interesting thing about it, Trask Powell won a state championship on that level. It was a 3A, whatever Goose Mays were. And Nick Cody won a state championship on his 4 or 5A level, with a lot of those boys being from Coconut Grove.
Right.
I think it was 30 of them down in Mays, and the great Craig Curry and the others, 20, 25 or so over at Coral Gables.
I want to talk about Trask Powell because I think of all the people at Carver and the people that were a part of the faculty and the coaching staff over there, I think he towers over everybody.
Yes.
And he wasn't originally from Coconut Grove. He was from Overtown.
Right.
He was a graduate of Booker T. Washington High School and Florida A&M. But I want you to talk about what a huge influence that man was in Coconut Grove. Even though he wasn't from there,
Right.
he brought his style to the Grove.
Right. Well, all great leaders, and he magnified leadership and the word leader, have an aura, have a charisma about them. And it don't hurt that you 6'3", 235. And you just have the orange of respect when you walk into a room. And he had that, and young men respected that, and he demanded it on the field. And here's the thing, off the field, he still demanded that excellence of behavior, educationally in the classroom, and mannerisms off the field. Black great coaches, Newt Rockneys, Vince Lombardi, and other great coaches, they just have that magnetism, and he had it. And was truly missed when segregation came in and kind of split the community. Not only did it split the community from a sports aspect, but from a mentorship aspect, where young men now don't have that mentor to look up and guide them until their graduation. Not that they couldn't get it over in Coral Gables, but you still had that racial divide there, where if coaches was reaching out, it still was a difficult transition for a black student athlete to attend a Coral Gables High School during that time. Obviously, things have changed now, but yes, Traz was quite a person, and when you see him coach, boy, woo, intimidating as well.
I mean, most people here they know the name Trazpal, but they don't know the person behind the name. They know him for the football stadium over at Dade North or Miami-Dade North.
Right.
But and there have been countless great players that have played on that field, but a lot of them probably don't even know who Trazpal was.
No. We tried to capture that history through the Hall of Fame. And what we are displaying there, again, we invite you to all of your listeners to call us to talk about taking a private tour. But yeah, you're right. Certain men just have that leadership. Now through my nonprofit, Leadership Prep Foundation, Inc., which the Hall of Fame comes under, that's what I espouse to do with our leadership sports development program and initiatives. And right now we have one hopefully starting up in Bradenton, Florida, as well as in Atlanta, where my son runs that provides sports performance training and leadership development at the same time as it relates to building the next generation of student athletes. So what I learned from Traz, I'm kind of mirroring it today through my nonprofit as far as leadership, then sports excellence, not sports excellence and leadership from my perspective.
Now, you mentioned earlier before how the neighborhood has changed since integration or segregation. I had a chance to talk to a gentleman who played at Miami High in my last show, and he played during the 1950s. And I asked him if he and his teammates had ever come across the black players from the black schools, if they had ever come across the same paths. And he told me, no, they never did. They never got to know those players. And I just found that those guys probably lived just a few miles away and never knew each other. It's just crazy to me.
And you're right. Yeah. You mentioned in an earlier conversation, guys like, was that Gary Dunn and Ralph Ortega? All those guys was close with the black football players on the team, like Gerald Tinka and Craig Curry. But you're right, it wasn't that much mixing of social interaction, but just on the football field only. Racial tension was still taboo during that time, so it's probably somewhat difficult to hang out like you see now in social settings, and we've come a long way. But hey, if you ever talk to that gentleman again and he want to have that reunion, let's do it. I know a lot of the athletes that have been inducted, and we can pull that off. I would love to see those guys back together again.
Right. I want to get your opinion on how the Grove has changed over the years. You go back all the way back to when you grew up in the 60s as a kid, and now you see what it's like today. How has the neighborhood changed over the last 40, 50 years?
Ooh, dramatically, Jay. I mean, it changed both socially, economically. What has concurred is gentrification in a different type of economic depression or oppression, I should say, not depression, oppression, where developers just come in and buy up homes, give people offers they can't refuse, the older ones who still own the homes, that is. And in their moment of, I think, not thinking, they jump on the offers, and next thing they know is not enough because everything is high here anyway. Long and short of it, they move, homes torn down, big white castles of homes are built up, and the numbers of the black population now decrease. I always say when I was in school, I wouldn't be too offbeat if I said the population's around 20,000 African Americans in the Grove. Now I think it's less than 5. And each year decreasing. So yes, a dramatic change. The most important change, Jay, was the closing of George Washington Carver. There, you had the teachers was just excellent. It wasn't all the stuff you see in classrooms now. And when they broke that down, now you had to go to another school where the teacher-student relationship wasn't good, wasn't demanding, and it just broke the fabric of the community from my perspective. And didn't stop the athletic excellence.
Right.
Because a lot of kids like Amari Cooper, from what I understand, may have grew up in part of the project area of the Grove, but that new generation of recruiting came in, where high school coaches began to take athletes out of communities and take them to their prospective schools. I think that happened to Amari Cooper. So we still birthed great athletes. Matter of fact, it's a young lady that I want to see if I can get you on the show. I think she's 11, 12 years old, has been the national shot put champion.
Oh, wow.
At 11 years old. I think 2 years in a row, 11, 10. And my point is, that hasn't stopped the athletic excellence per se. It's still come out of Coconut Grove today.
Oh, wow. I mean, where do you see the Grove going in the future?
All based upon leadership. I live by the creed, Jay, everything rises and falls on leadership. What I'm trying to do through Leadership Prep Foundation, and leave this particular history with in the hands of my son, building a youth leadership performance academy, where we can continue to develop the type of athletes that we have developed over the years. So, to answer your question, I'm trying to create through my nonprofit that youth center / all-purpose center, where athletes not only can take their athletic skills to another level, but also their leadership skills to another level as well. So with God's will, I found some property there in the Grove that I hope we can get before the developers get, to create that center that would be a one-stop shop place for not only great student athlete performance training, but also leadership development as well.
I mean, you mentioned before that, you know, the Black population in Coconut Grove has reduced over the years, but it still produces some good players. I mean, we've seen Frank Gore, Roscoe Parrish.
Yes.
You know, from my generation, I remember Marvin Jones, obviously. Yes. Now, Marvin, you know, went to Northwestern, and I think Roscoe went to Miami High. But traditionally, the guys from the Grove stay pretty true to Coral Gables High School. Right.
Well, what happened there again? You take a leader like Traz Power out of the community, you break down the fabric of not only so much family, but the social expectations. Like, who wouldn't want to play for Traz Power? Therefore, and then, I know you remember this, Jay, the high school regulations began to change, where once you were in a neighborhood, you had to go to that high school in that neighborhood. Now, coaches come in some kind of way, get you out of that neighborhood and come play for them. That's what happened with a Roscoe Parrish and some of those other guys who, you know, and plus you couldn't go to Carver because it was only up to 9th grade. Would you go to Gables? Well, if I had a coach that I admired come and say, don't go to Gables, come and go over here with so-and-so, kids tend to follow the coaches because of the coaches' expectations and relationship, which is a new thing going on now. As it relates to student athletes and coaches' relationships.
Now, I'm going to ask you a tough question, but I'm going to see if maybe you do the best you can on this one. If you had to make like a Mount Rushmore of Coconut Grove athletes, or not just athletes, but Coconut Grove people in Coconut Grove sports, what 4 people would you select?
Oh, hell, that's an easy there, Jay. I'll go with Craig Curry at quarterback, because he was solid, and he was 6'3", 210, 220. I'll go with nothing but speed in the backfield with Gerald Tinker, where
Olympic gold medalist too, right?
Olympic gold medalist, just run like lightning. I'll go with Frank Gore. Also, I'll go with Tinker at the flanker. I'll go with Frank Gore in the backfield. You know, what is he, second leading rusher now in the NFL history? So can't stop there. That offensive line is lining with a lot of guys. as well. I'll go to a guy that we call Beatty Buck, also in the backfield with Frank, who just gives you speed and that dot here through there. Roscoe Parrish on the wing, a wide receiver. On defensive side, Denzel Perriman at linebacker, presently playing for the Chargers. Marvin Brothers on the defensive line, Jones.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. McGahee in there, busting heads. A host of athletes that would make that. But that top four, Craig Curry, Frank Gore, Gerald Tinker, and possibly, we call him Beatty Buck, Bertram Taylor.
Yeah.
All right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
How can people get on tour with the Coconut Grove Sports Hall of Fame? How do they where do they find it, and how can they get involved with it?
They can go on the website info@taptaptours.com. Again, info@taptaptours.com, and they can register for a tour of Coconut Grove, the Little Bahamas, which would take them not only by the Hall of Fame Museum, but also the historical aspects of Little Bahamas, and bring them back to a new place that I'm going to invite you, your staff, and others to, particularly next Friday, to the Taste of Cocoa Bahamas. That's a venue that I founded that captures the essence of the Bahamian social flavor of living, Junkanoo, Bahamian cuisine, conch fritters, conch salad. We had a stage, where we do a variety of music from jazz to blues to Caribbean to reggae. You'll love that on Grand Avenue across from the old Ace Theater. So you ask a question, how do we hang on to that? That's my effort to create the Taste of Cocoa Bahamas. Across the street is the Hall of Fame Museum, also doing the tours. So I'm kind of trying to do my part to save what's left of Coconut Grove before it goes under developers' hand.
Can people donate to the Hall of Fame? For example, what if I had like an old helmet or a jersey or something from Mays or Carver back in the day? If there's somebody out there,
yes, please. You can contact me personally at awleadershipprep.org@gmail.com. Again, awleadershipprep.org@gmail.com. Or call me. Our office number is 678-596-4542. Again, 678-596-4542. And we'll soon have a completed website up where you will see more of our next Hall of Fame induction gallery. I think, Jay, I'm going to invite you to be the guest speaker at that event.
All right.
And
a host
of other things going on. We'll have a community board coming up soon when we have the grand opening of the Taste of Cocoa Bahamas. So through those contacts, you can reach out to me, and we'll love to take a look at the memento you may have that we can house in the Hall of Fame Museum.
That's awesome. Well, Anthony, I appreciate you stopping by. And once again, if you're ever in Coconut Grove or you're in Grand Avenue, stop on by the Coconut Grove Sports Hall of Fame and say hello to Anthony and Charlie Coney over at the Coconut Grove Sports Hall of Fame.
Please do.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure is mine. And let's get together again, because you have a lot of history, man. We can.
I'm a sports history geek. I always tell people it's just a passion of mine, and I love talking to people who.
Well, thank you for having me on the show. I look forward to coming back upon your invite.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Pleasure's mine.
Thank you for joining us again on the Go See Orange Bowl. I'm Jay Rao, and we'll see you again.